Sometimes it's easier to understand some of these concepts if they're presented visually. And I think the work of Pierre Bourdieu lends itself to visualizing whiteness and aspects of it, especially the idea of de facto racism. For Bourdieu, there are three important social structuring devices, if I can use that term: habitus, fields, and institutions. Habitus, the green circle in this diagram, is the largest and most abstract of these devices. Here is one definition he offered for the concept. It is a subjective but not individual system of internalized structures, schemes of perception, conception, and action common to all members of the same group or class. The root of the word is found in habit, habitat, habitable. In fact, habit, right, is a common word for patterned behavior, right? Habitus communicates this sense of experience organized in such a way that it seems completely natural, that it could be no other way. Incidentally, the root also communicates becoming clothed, so there is an active and performative aspect of habitus. One way to think about habitus is that it prescribes who can have power and control capital, or the ability to get things done in society. Most of us are familiar with financial capital, but there are other forms of capital as well: social capital, cultural capital. Don't have time to go into those right now. The subjective nature of habitus that he mentions here indicates that it is the result of decisions even if they are very remote. With whiteness, for example, many of us are reluctant to make white supremacist arguments and overtly based decisions on white supremacist notions, but at one time these were very common social currency and shaped laws, customs, morality, traditions, etc. Also, let me introduce this, or assert here, that habitus is not inevitable. It can be challenged, modified, and dismantled. It takes a long time to do that. It takes very long-term concerted effort, but it can be changed. Fields, represented by the gray circle here, can be defined as arenas of production, circulation, and appropriation and exchange of goods, services, knowledge, or status, and the competitive positions held by actors in their struggle to accumulate, exchange, and monopolize different kinds of power resources. Again, that idea of capital. Fields are where the abstract notions of habitus start to get shaped. Let me pick up a thread from Jamie Sacco's presentation on sexual orientation and gender. If the habitus in a given social sphere is heteronormativity, that is the expectation that all sexuality will be binary between males and females. Then, fields shaped by that expectation will reinforce that notion. So, an example of that would be psychology and mental health. Let me give you a family example. My grandmother's brother-in-law was a psychology professor for many years and quit a position when he was told that he could no longer teach that being gay was a mental disorder. For years, the habitus of heteronormativity shaped what psychiatrists could even know about persons on the LGBTQ spectrum, and that in turn shaped policies and practices. Institutions and their smaller structures are where the proverbial rubber hits the road. This is where habitus starts to directly affect people's lives. A simple definition for institutions are an implicate order of organizations, groups, and status positions. Returning back to my grandmother's brother-in-law, He taught psychology. He taught in the psychology departments of Long Beach City College in California, and later at Snow College in Cedar City, Utah. Right. So um, he participated in an organization that did have status positions. His teaching affected the lives of students and the lives of their clients, for the ones who went into clinical work. I didn't know my uncle, my great uncle, all that well, so I can't judge his homophobia. But the heteronormativity of the American habitus exerted such an influence on what he could know and how he could act that it was unnecessary for him to be overtly homophobic. The homophobia existed and was socially transmitted through him and created oppressive social relations. Again, I don't know how conscious he was of that, but it doesn't matter. So I'd like to leave you with a question. If whiteness, the belief that whites are essentially better than persons of color, or that white ways of knowing are or should be normal and universal, or that white values are inherently superior to those of other cultures and societies, how would that notion affect the policies and practices in fields, institutions, and departments under its sway? Now, one thing to add to this question, right? St. Martin's University is an institution that does have departments, that participates in multiple fields. And so one of the things we need to do, or ought to start doing, is asking, how does whiteness affect our policies and practices? And that's a huge, huge question, and not one that can be dealt with or answered in a very quick and easy way.